Hey there, welcome back to all you need to know about modifiers. And today we're gonna go ahead and look at the mirror modifier. In this video, we're gonna learn all about what mirror modifier has to offer and what are the different options in there. There might be a few that you don't really know about, so stick around till the end of the video so that you guys can get a good grasp on this modifier, right? So, yeah, without further ado, why don't we get right into it? All right, so we have this default cube in our scene now. And yeah, before we go ahead and start working with the mirror modifier, I just want to say that mirror modifier is one of the most important modifiers in Blender. And I think most of the pros of Blender will agree with me. And that is because whenever you're doing hard surface modeling, right, you are creating things that are usually symmetric on both the sides or multiple sides on that matter. So mirror modifier actually makes that job easier. So what I mean to say is basically mirror modifier does what its name suggests, right? It mirrors your actions that you take on one axis to the other axis that you have defined. So in a traditional way, whenever you're using mirror modifier, you go into the edit mode, you cut the object in half, um, and sorry, hold on. You cut the object in half and then apply the mirror modifier to the remaining side of it, right? So basically, I went into the edit mode. I deleted the vertices on uh, the other side of the x-axis, and now I just have half of the object here, right? So this is the cleanest way to do that. Now I'm going to go to the modifier properties, which is the wrench icon over here. Click on add modifier and then mirror modifier. As soon as that you do that, can you see it already brought back the other half of the object, right? And yeah, that's primarily what the function of the mirror modifier is. But there are many different options that we can explore over here. Let me quickly switch on the screencast keys here so that you guys can see what buttons I'm clicking. Um, but yeah, basically, if you go into the edit mode now and just at a high level, we'll go over it in detail in a minute. But currently, it's clicking on x-axis, and that's why it's mirroring the x-axis. So I'm gonna go into the edit mode and I'll make some change here. Now, as you can see, that this change is automatically getting replicated to the other side. So no matter what I do here, it will automatically be replicated on the other side that you have defined, or the other axis that you have defined in your mirror modifier, right? So that's the use of the mirror modifier. Now it makes things easier. Like for example, if you want to do this manually, it's just going to take you really long time, and you might not even get it perfect, right? So some side might be longer, some side might be shorter, and you don't want to get sit there and go ahead and fix all those things when you're in a hurry, right? And modeling's if you have done 3D modeling, you know that it takes way longer than it should. So anything that saves time is a good thing. So yeah, let's go through each options that are there in the mirror modifier, and we are going to go through each of them, right? So the first section here that you see is the axis section, right? So whatever axes that you're going to click here, these are the axes that your mirror is going to be effective on, right? So like for example, if I just click on x-axis, only the x-axis is getting mirrored. So if I click on y-axis here, now my y-axis is also getting mirrored. So like for example, if I do this, sorry, let me make a quick change here. Let's say I bring this out. Can you see it's automatically getting mirrored on the y-axis? And if I make any change, it will be reflected on the different axes as well, right? Now, similarly, if I click on z-axis or the z-axis, and now it's replicating anything that happens at the top right onto the bottom. So, yep, that's pretty much how it works. So it takes a look at what axes you have selected and goes ahead and applies your mirror according to that, right? So the next option here is bisect. Now, what does a bisect do? Well, let's add another cube into our scene, and let's go ahead and add a mirror modifier again, right? So I'll tell you why I went ahead and deleted the original one, so that I can explain it to you better, right? So let's assume that we didn't go into the tab and didn't delete half of the cube. Now we have the entire cube here. But if I don't check bisect and I go ahead and go into the edit mode and make some change here, right? Now, can you see that there are two different edges that are showing up here, right? And like, even though it's symmetric, it's just mirroring it weird. And if you don't want that, you can just simply click bisect. Now what it does is that it will automatically go ahead and delete anything that is on the opposite side of your mirror, right? So anything that is not a part of this, now you can see there's a transparent vertex showing up over here, but if you make a change here, it doesn't really change a lot. Is because this one doesn't exist anymore as far as Blender goes, right? So you can just simply make your change here, and this is how it's gonna affect your cube, right? Now what is flip? So whenever you bisect something, now you cannot really select this side of it, right? You can only select one side of your object and make change. So if you click on flip, what it does, it just reverses the order of doing stuff, right? Like for example, we were selecting a vertex over here before, now we are selecting it over here, and this is the active vertex. Now that's primarily the function of flip. And yeah, it's similarly, it's the same. If you select each axis, it's going to go ahead and uh, work on each of those axes depending on which axis is selected, right? So that's primarily what these three options are for. Now we added the mirror modifier and it was just working fine. It's already working fine. So why do I need to select the object here? Now this mirror object option is given to you for a separate reason. So let's add another cube and we'll add another object in here. Let's say I'm going to add a UV sphere, right? And let's move it on the x-axis. Now I want this sphere to be mirrored right next to like on the opposite side of this cube, right? And I want the distance to be the same, exactly the same from this cube in the center. Now in order to do that, this is where that option of selecting an object gonna come in, right? So when I go ahead and click on this mirror object option and select my cube, so what it does is that it takes the origin point of the object that you selected here to mirror the other object that has the mirror modifier on. So now if I make any change in here, it's going to be reflected on the other object that is the mirror of this one, but this object is just here to tell the mirror modifier as to what's the distance the original object is supposed to be mirrored at, right? So if I delete this and if I just add an empty here instead of a cube, let's go ahead and add an empty quickly. And if I use this empty to mirror it, it's gonna just simply gonna go ahead and do the same thing, right? So if I don't want an extra object in my scene, I can just go ahead and use an empty in that case. So that's the purpose of that. Now what is clipping? So for clipping, let's go back to a cube. Now I'll go ahead and separate it again into a half cube, right? And I know I'm flipping between objects a lot, but each option is slightly different from the other. So I have to, this is the best way I think is what I can explain it to you, right? So yeah, so let's add a mirror modifier again onto this. Now we are going to first look at what it does without clipping, right? So if you come into the edit mode and I have the mirror modifier enabled, now if I select the center vertices here and move it, can you see it's creating a gap in between? And that means that these are two different vertices that are just close to each other, right? But if I don't want that, if I want my center line, this entire thing to be merged automatically whenever it's close to each other, I'm going to go ahead and click on clipping. So once I do that, now if I try to move it, it doesn't move, right? Because it's clubbed together, it's merged together, and that is the function of clipping. It just makes sure that we don't have those extra vertices whenever we are using this mirror modifier, right? So it's a very good option, and just make sure that you have it enabled if you don't want to go ahead and end up in a situation where you have your vertices either overlapping each other or just going into an opposite direction altogether. So if I click on clipping and if I move it close to each other, as soon as they come really close to each other, they'll get merged and there won't be a second one, right? So it's a very good option whenever you're using a mirror modifier. So just keep that in mind. Now, what is this merge distance? Now, merge distance is basically the same. It will go ahead and merge those vertices depending on the amount of distance that you have defined here. So anything that is closer than this distance or equal to this distance is going to automatically merge together whenever you're using a mirror modifier. Then we've got the bisect distance. Now, what does that mean? So bisect distance is basically somewhat similar to the merge distance, but it only gets enabled when you have bisect on. So if you have bisect on, it's just going to go ahead and merge any vertices that are close to these close to this value between the bisect line, right? So this center line is the bisect line. If anything that is close to here, close to that 0.001 meter, it's automatically going to go ahead and merge that. Now, the next option we're going to look at is data. Now, not a lot of people either use this option or don't know about this option. So I'm going to go ahead and explain it to you. This can be a really useful option when you're using mirror modifier with UVs, right? So let me go ahead and add a texture where I can actually show you what it does. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a basic brick texture. And here we have it. I'll just make sure that I'm looking at the UV of it. Okay, so now this texture is all even. It looks like one object, right? Even though I've mirrored it. Now you can even play with this. So that's where this data tab comes in, right? So if I click on mirror U, now you can see is that it's going ahead and mirroring these right next to like it's creating a mirror of the texture as well, right? So you can either do it on like basically this is for the thing horizontally and this is for vertically, right? So this is how you can actually control the UVs that you're actually applying on your mirrored side of the object, right? So this is one option. The other option is offset. Now you can use this to, again, this won't mirror it, but with this you can just offset the UV on the other side of your mirror part, right? Vertex Group, it's a little complicated. I tried using it, but it didn't work. But basically, the Blender manual says that you can add a few vertices to a Vertex Group. Like, for example, you can add these into a Vertex Group, but you have to name the vertex with a suffix of dot .r or dot .right or dot .left, depending on which side you're mirroring. And then this vertex group, if it's checked, it will automatically pick up those vertex groups and only mirror those parts of it. But it didn't work because when I had the mirror modifier, it was still mirroring the other things as well, which didn't make sense to me. So maybe I don't know it enough to play with it, or maybe it's a different option that I probably need a little bit more research on, right? So then there is the other option, which is flip UDIM, right? So what it basically does is it mirrors the texture coordinates around each tile center. So again, I don't know, I couldn't find a use case for it, but it's basically again mirroring the coordinates of the texture that is applied here onto the opposite side of it. So if you click on it, that's what it's going to do. But I don't see any specific use for it. Unless you have a use case, please let me know down in the comment section. But yeah, that's pretty much what it does as per the Blender manual, right? So I had to look these two up, but I couldn't find any use case that made sense, right? So yeah, I guess that's about it for the mirror modifier. You can do a lot with this modifier. It's a really useful one. Like I said, right? Whenever you're doing hard surface modeling or hard surface editing, this modifier can be a lifesaver. Now, there is one thing that you might not know, and this is a bonus tip. So basically, if you want to inset a face, now as you can see, it's creating two faces, right? Even though it's a mirror. If you want to avoid that, when you click on I for inset, just press B. So if you press B, B is for boundary. So it automatically snaps it to the boundary and just make sure that there's only one face that is getting created instead of two faces, right? So that's a pretty neat part or a pretty handy tip when you're actually working with editing your model. But yeah, I really hope that this was useful and you liked this video. If you did, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more content like this, right? And if you want to look at some abstract designs that I created and tutorials on that, you can click on the top right of top left of your screen right now. Or if you want to learn about other modifiers, just click on the top bottom left of your screen. And yeah, thank you so much for hanging out so far, and I'll see you guys in the next video.